Hey y'all, I'm Dan Hamilton, as always the host of the Next Gen Warrior Show. The Next Gen Warrior Show is brought to you by Chairman George P. Bush and the Texas Veterans Land Board. Here it is a beautiful day in Austin, Texas, and I'm really excited to be joined by Eric Eversole, the president of Hiring Our Heroes, live from Washington, D.C. Eric, I think you are our first guest who has been outside of the state of Texas, so thank you for being on our show. Can you give the audience a little background on your military service as well as your role as president at Hiring Our Heroes?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I started my military career as an enlisted airman in the Indiana Air National Guard a lot of years ago. For me, it was after I graduated college, and I really wanted to find a way that I could continue to serve. And at the time while going to law school. So that first step in service for me was the Air National Guard in Indiana. And then once I got to law school, I knew that call to service was much greater than just a stint in the National Guard. And at that point, as a law student, I joined the Navy as a JAG officer. So I spent the last 20 years serving in various capacities with the Navy, both the active duty Navy and the Navy Reserves as a JAG officer, and spent more than 23 years in both the active duty and reserve components. As far as the Hiring Our Heroes part of it, this was really an opportunity that, even after, and I think this is a story that's probably pretty typical with a lot of your listeners and people who participate in your show. There's always this call to serve, even after you hang up the uniform. And so for me, as at the time a Navy Reserve officer, I really wanted to continue to give back to the community. And when this opportunity came open, especially in the 2011-12 timeframe, when we were really facing a national crisis in veteran unemployment, it was an opportunity to really make a difference in the community that means so much to me and my family.
So you've really seen the veteran narrative change from when you started about 10 years ago to where it is now. And something that has become very apparent in the discussions that I've had here at this table is the impact of underemployment. So we're seeing a lot of veterans transition out of the military, post 9/11 generation, get jobs, and then maybe feel stagnant or not advancing in the way that they would hoped. Have you seen that from your perspective, and can you shed a little light on that?
Yeah, Dan, I think you have to look at this from a historical perspective of, where we were in 2011 when we started and where we are now. At the time, veteran unemployment was about 12.5% for post 9/11 veterans in 2011. For veterans under the age of 25, it was nearly 30%. And quite honestly, when the U.S. Chamber started Hiring Our Heroes back in 2011, we were responding to a national crisis of how we could leverage our state and local chambers to make connections with employers that would give, at that point, mostly veterans, unemployed veterans, a chance. And so I tell people back in 2011, we did what we could do best, which was mobilize the community, but we were doing triage.
Right.
We were doing triage, and most of the organizations in the space were doing triage. But as we've grown as an organization, as veteran unemployment has now come down to the 3% range.
Very low, yeah.
It's really about being strategic, and it's about thinking about not just a job, but is it the right job? And how do we start connecting with service members, not right at transition, which in my view is a huge mistake. How do we get left at transition? And I think as we've seen the space grow, as we've grown as an organization, as companies have grown, we're starting to see very, very significant signs that companies and organizations are starting to get this in a way that they didn't get it 10 years ago.
So can I pause you real quick then? Because the other part of this conversation is the business community, and the Chamber and Hiring Our Heroes has such a great relationship with those businesses. How have maybe they changed their hiring practices, or maybe how have they learned to bring veteran talent into their companies?
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go. So you're reading my mind.
Yes, exactly. One step ahead of you, I guess. Yeah.
Two folks from the Naval Service,
Yes, we're seeing eye to eye.
Look, I'll tell you the biggest change in my view is that companies are starting to treat veteran recruiting the same way they treat college campus recruiting. They're getting left of transition. They're getting them before they get out. They're not letting happenstance send them to, either back home or
Yeah.
to stay in the same duty station. And they're going to bases, trying to recruit back to locations where they have opportunities. And they're coming, not with just, hopes and dreams of potential jobs. They're coming with real jobs. Last year we did 32 or 33 career summits on installations with these private sector employers. Right now we're at Kadena Air Force Base in Okinawa. 2 days ago I don't know if you ever had a chance to visit lovely Camp Foster, but we had
not.
1,200 active duty service members who, are thousands of miles away from home that we're connecting with employers. And our offer rate at those events last year was about 42, 43%. So there is a massive sea change in how companies view veteran talent. That's one aspect of it, treating it like college campus recruiting. The second major thing that employers are doing that I think is equally critical is they're investing in training. They know that the basic skill sets are there, but what are the investments in training where they can fine tune this talent to really get an asset that is leaps and bounds above what they're finding any place else in the country.
Can I pause there for a second? So what is some of that training that veterans are getting from companies? Is it cultural training? Is it professional training of like, hey, this is how you, this is the expectations of the workplace? Does it differ by industry?
Yeah, so it's a combination. I'll give you some really good examples of this, but some of it, is on the job training, almost an internship. We run the largest skill bridge provider in the country, and we put about 1,000 active duty service members before they get out into internships.
Wow.
The offer rate for that program, and again, mostly senior enlisted and junior officers, 1,000 active duty service members last year, 92% offer rate.
Yeah.
With an average salary of $88,000.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and so it's a significant sea change in what was available a couple of years ago. But we're also proud to partner with organizations like Toyota, and we launched a new program called M10, a military technician program, where we take active duty service members and put them through a 12-week technician training program, and at the end of it, they're certified technicians.
So can I ask you, are you going to, if you go to Camp Foster and you say, I have this technician program that we're running, are you going to find the Motor T folks? Are you going to find the electricians, et cetera, in the military? Or are you opening this up to every military specialization and saying, okay.
It's a basic training for civilian skills. I mean, it is. We are off-ramping people in the same way they're on-ramped into the military. Mm-hmm. And at some point, I'd love to get you and the land commissioner. One of our facilities is in Austin.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, we'd love to get you out there. But the reality is, if you look at this from an opportunity perspective, the active duty component's significant. We should obviously talk about that. But let's talk about the reserve and guard component as well. In a program like M10, think about that 18-year-old recruit who is thinking about either going to a technical school to become a mechanic, mm-hmm. or could go to the National Guard and learn to be a truck mechanic in the military. And then as soon as they're done with that technician service, turn around and learn how to become
fully employed. Yep.
With a guaranteed job. Absolutely. As a recruiter, I take that storyline any day of the week. Save your money, we'll give it to you, and you're going to have a guaranteed job from an employer that wants to make a difference and respect your service.
So I'm interested then, if you could progress with me through a veteran's career, and let's say they're 2 or 3 years into their professional career, or maybe somebody who's not a veteran, if they're somebody in the audience who hasn't served and they're maybe just right out of college and they're going through a transition as well, and they're saying, how do I get a leg up? What do I do to try to get a promotion? How do I get into a management role? What are some things that you advise veterans that maybe can be applied not just to the veterans community, but everyone in the workforce?
Well, and I think that's a great question, Dan, because is what we're seeing with a lot of veterans is that the challenges that they experience from an employment perspective, they may be exacerbated because of where they're currently stationed or what they've been doing for the last 4 years. But a lot of them are challenges a lot of millennial and Gen Z folks face, which is the economic landscape looks much different now than it did even 10 years ago. And what we're seeing, especially with kids from low and middle income families, is that there's a disconnect between generations where a lot of your current generation of young Americans see economic opportunity in this country much differently than their parents. And unfortunately, they often see that economic opportunity through the lens of their grandparents. And so, a couple of examples I love to use because I think they're somewhat funny is, people see transportation, the transportation industry as Smokey and the Bandit, right? It's, bar fights and, outrunning cops. Or they see, the oil industry in a very different, wellhead type of light.
Spindle top almost, the old school style.
Right, or you see manufacturing, like the Laverne and Shirley model, but it's nothing like that in this country anymore. And if you go down, and I don't know if you've ever been down to the Toyota manufacturing facility down in San Antonio, it's amazing. I mean, the robot technology, the advanced computer design, the efficiency that it operates at. It is truly remarkable what's going on in these facilities. But a lot of young Americans, because of where they grow up, and this is where I think it becomes exacerbated, a lot of these young kids are coming from they join the military, come from rural areas of the country. And I grew up in a small town from Indiana. Neither of my parents graduated from high school, let alone college. And my parents said, look, you got one or two choices in life. You're either going to go to the military or you're going to go to college.
Right.
But the reality is that, coming from those rural economies, you don't necessarily know or understand the pathways to these emerging economic opportunities in this country.
So is a part of your job then, and a part of hiring our heroes' job, almost fighting the perceptions of certain career fields? Because here at the General Land Office, we do a lot of work in the energy industry, especially large cities like Houston, Dallas, here in Texas have a huge amount of energy jobs. And those jobs, like you said, maybe people think about them as, maybe working on the well, but there's transportation jobs there, there's high-level paying jobs, even in an office atmosphere. And now that technology has permeated almost every single sector of the economy, you're actually having to go in and almost articulate what these jobs are versus what people in the armed forces think they might be.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. I mean, and it's on both sides of the equation.
Right.
On one hand, you got companies that have traditional job descriptions that say, I need 4 years and a Bachelor of Science doing X. And they really don't. And then on the other side of this equation, I got service members who know very little about, the oil and gas industry, especially if they didn't grow up in it.
Right.
And so, for us, with a good partner of ours in Texas is Phillips 66 is another good example. Do a lot with BP. We do a lot with the oil and gas industry. Helping to reshape those narratives and thinking about the role of technology in those jobs and how they can leverage skill sets that they learned in the military is I would tell you, that's probably about 70% of what we're doing now really telling that narrative and then thinking about the pathway and then making connections. Oftentimes service members don't necessarily understand the power of a network when it comes to getting a job. We've been
That's one of the biggest things that I think I've learned since I got out of the military too, was how I didn't have, like, for example, if you're in Japan and then you move to Austin, Texas, or you come to Washington, D.C., you might have an incredible background or military skill set, but you're missing that, what I describe as the social and professional network. How can a veteran go about attaining that almost and adding that to their kind of professional development?
Well, I'm going to talk about, let's start with the active duty service members.
Sure.
And there's one word that they need to hear and hear loudly. If you're on active duty, you need to do the research on Skill Bridge. And Skill Bridge is a program that allows active duty service members to either receive a skill set or go into our corporate fellowship program and do an internship. Microsoft runs a great Skill Bridge program called the Software and Services Academy. Amazon's doing great work at apprenticeships. If you're not learning about those opportunities while you're active duty, then you're missing out on probably the biggest and most important program that's been created by DoD in the last decade for employment opportunities for service members. But the reality is, and here's what, why, you think about this from a narrative of what college students experience. How do college students get a job? Internships.
Right.
It's not different. It's not different at all. And
that's the bridge you're talking about. That internship is the bridge, right?
And look at our corporate fellowship program. We're running it out of 18 locations, and I can get TAD orders. So even that kid I got for that M10 program, Toyota's M10 program, yep. I've had 30 applications from Camp Foster in the last 48 hours. And we'll get TAD orders for them. We'll send them either to Austin or Jacksonville, and we'll get them the skill sets that they need to get a job. But the reality is the first step for an active duty service member is you have to look at, how do we get you into that environment where you can
into the pipeline.
And this gets us something that I think back to your question a couple minutes ago about what we as not only a country can learn, but also what millennials and service members can think about. We got, as a country, as we face a situation where we have more jobs than workers available to fill those jobs, we have to get past a piece of paper and start evaluating individuals based on the skill sets and the skills that we need to fill jobs. And that's what these internships and these training pipelines do, is they create a pathway for people to showcase what often doesn't show up on a resume. And for service members, I can't think of anything more valuable, right? Is that ability to say, hey, look, I'm more than just a piece of paper. And I think that's where we're seeing a significant sea change, Dan.
Why do you think there's been that sea change? Because when I started applying for the workforce maybe 5 years ago or so, 4 or 5 years ago, that was definitely a barrier to me, right? I felt like I was capable of doing the job. Maybe people in the armed forces may feel like they're doing that. And then I want to ask you quickly about mental health in the workplace too, but why has that changed? Well, what's the conversation going on in the business community to say, hey, there's maybe a better way of looking at applicants than what we have been going about it like?
Well, a couple of things. I mean, one, there's the shortage of skilled workers in this country. I mean, that is it. The other thing is second, they're seeing military talent in a different lens. They're performing incredibly well in the workplace. They're willing to invest in some minor, often minor reskilling or upskilling. And at the end of the day, they get someone who's going to be committed to their place of business and their mission. And so businesses are look, they're smart. They got to figure this out. And if you ask most CEOs, and there's lots of research out there, if you ask them what their number one concern is, it's workforce. I mean, it is workforce through and through.
And finding quality workers who want to stay with the companies that they're hired into?
It's stay or when they're there, they're 100% committed.
Right.
I mean, I don't think we're going to get to the point anytime in the near future where, people are going to stay on a highly, frequent basis with 30, 40 years with the company. But, when they're there, you got to have someone who's committed and dedicated, who's pushing the envelope, who's doing the right things, working hard. And that's what our service members bring. I mean, these kids are pulling themselves up by the bootstraps, often from these blue-collar families, because they want a better life. And I'll roll the dice on those folks any day of the week. And most companies do.
Yeah, I think that's just such a great place for the business community to be. And it's such a good thing for active duty and veterans to hear that you're wanted in the business community. They want to bring you on. They want to train you. And if what you can do is like what I always try to remind myself, show up on time, work hard, and try to help the people around you, you can be wildly successful after the military. But something that I wanted to add to the conversation was that Hiring Our Heroes in the U.S. Chamber has really kind of taken on mental health in the workplace. And this is not just a veterans issue. America as a whole is suffering from anxiety, depression, and suicide across every industry. So I'm interested to hear from your perspective, what can veteran leaders do in the workplace where they can either help prioritize mental health or try to make sure that in their office or in their workplace that it is a healthy mental workspace for their employees?
Well, I think first and foremost, and this is an issue that affects all Americans. Part of the reason that we're not doing this just for veterans is from my perspective, I didn't want to have one more issue where there was somehow a difference between our veteran population and the rest of the workforce.
Absolutely.
Now, the source for veterans, the source of that mental health challenge may be different. But sure, it's still a mental health challenge that we as all Americans need to be worried about and find ways to address. But the number one thing veterans can do once they're in the workforce is to help normalize the conversation around mental health in the workplace. You as a veteran, we as veterans know that just because you have anxiety or depression or any of the other number of health conditions or wellness conditions, is that doesn't make you broken. It
Right.
doesn't mean you can't be fixed. And we as a country have to start talking about this like we talk about every other health issue, which is, with early care and treatment, it can be fixed and you're going to be more productive once it is fixed. So, I think the one thing that the military has done a good job, and this is in no way, shape, or form intended to minimize the work we still need to do with 22 suicides a day.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, one of the ways that the military and our service members have showed incredible social innovation is their willingness to ask for help.
Yeah.
Back in the 2010, 2011 timeframe, we were seeing a lot of post 9/11 veterans coming back, and the military undertook a very significant campaign. I know that General Corelli at the time was aggressive on it on the Army side, but it's okay to ask for help. And the thing that veterans often don't see is how much people that aren't veterans look up to them. And so veterans will start asking for help in the workplace. If they help to normalize that conversation and help reduce stigma around asking for help, then they're going to be seen as a role model and help lead the way to long-term meaningful solutions. And it's really about starting the conversation, quite honestly, Dan.
No, that's great.
And veterans can do that better than anything. You don't need a $1 million program to start the conversation. It's whether
you need someone to speak up.
You need someone to speak up, and it's okay. You're not broken, and there's help out there, and you have teammates and family and friends that are going to help you get through it. And we all have those days, right? And we all have that time period where everything feels pretty darn heavy, but there's a way out. But the worst thing anyone can do is to shut themselves out from that network of family and friends and people who care. And so start that conversation.
So yourself in Hiring Our Heroes, what are you most looking forward to doing? I appreciate all the hard work that you have put into about bringing mental health and mental wellness to the forefront of American businesses. What are some other initiatives that you look forward to either rolling out at Hiring Our Heroes or something that maybe you have your eyes set on in the future?
Yeah, well, look, Dan, we have to solve the military spouse unemployment issue. That's still 20%. We're losing too many experienced leaders in the military because, 65% of most Americans rely on two incomes. And that's not the case for most military families, which are, struggling at about 45% with dual income. We got to fix it for military spouses, and we have to think about how we create some portable and remote career opportunities. How do we help reduce some of the stigma around military spouse employment? And we need to make sure that, not just from a money sake, but from a personal life satisfaction sake, military spouses are getting the employment opportunities that they deserve. And quite honestly, from a workforce perspective, 70% of my team are military spouses. There is no better talent set, untapped talent set in this country than military spouses. So that's one.
Yeah.
Second, we have to, I talked about getting left of transition and really talking to those active duty service members. From my perspective, and I think this is equally important for the long-term security of our country, we have to get left of recruitment. We have to be in the military, with an all-volunteer force, we have to help create those economic pathways for service members and young men and women who are thinking about joining. And obviously the GI Bill helps tremendously, but that's one small component of it. Yeah. If you can think about this from a recruitment perspective, military recruiters are, often their biggest competition are college campuses. So how do you help start telling the narrative about military service and working to guarantee post-military economic opportunity as a pathway to long-term economic success? The days of, you may have been recruited by this commercial. I was, but the days of slaying dragons as a recruiting message was good then, but it doesn't work now. Yep. And the GI Bill is one component of it, but even a GI Bill doesn't guarantee economic opportunity. And so we really have to think about leveraging things like the M10 program as a recruiting tool, not just let's kind of put some patches on it on your way out or after you leave the service. We do that. It's going to tremendously change the way we recruit in this country. And I tell people, name somebody on scale in this country who are putting more lower and middle income Americans and immigrants, quite honestly, into STEM related jobs in the United States military and doing it better on scale. No one. But the only way it's going to work, quite honestly, Dan, is continue to push on employers to understand that the value and the skill sets, there have to be jobs.
Yeah.
And I think we're getting there. We still have some work to do, but it's an exciting time that the landscape is changing. We're going to work pretty aggressively on this, all the way to the left of a boom effort, because we think it's critical to the country and to the workforce.
Well, it really is, Eric. And man, you hit on some great topics there. Everything from spouse unemployment to mental health in the workplace, and even trying to reach out to young recruits who, before they join the service, you guys have really taken a holistic approach at veteran transition out of the military. And so I just wanted to give you the last word. Is there anything else that you would like to provide that maybe I didn't get a chance to ask you?
No, I think that, this is, it's a great, time from an unemployment perspective for our service members. And it doesn't mean that we don't have folks struggling. We still have some that, quite honestly, during that 2011 timeframe, 2012, who haven't fully recovered. Right. And we got to keep an eye on them. We have, Vietnam era veterans who are still struggling. That's the greatest population of unemployment. But those are things that, we have to keep our eye on. We have to be committed to, but we also have to make sure that what happened in 2011 and what happened to the Vietnam era generation never happens again. We have to make sure that people, it has to be something more than just, people thanking service members.
Approach.
The best way you can thank a service member is with a job and a career and an opportunity.
Well, tell you what, Eric, I think we'll leave it there. That is, I think, a great message to not only veterans, but to the business community. And here at Next Gen Warrior, we appreciate you coming on to the set from all the way from Washington, D.C. And I want to thank you personally for your service to our country in the Navy, but also thank you for your continued service and leadership through hiring our heroes. It's been a great conversation. For those of you watching at home, go check out Hiring Our Heroes. Continue to get involved in your communities. Something that can't be replaced after you leave the service is that personal and professional growth that can be found through social networks. Get out there, meet people. Your military service has tremendous value in the workplace. We want to see you to continue to serve and continue to lead after leaving the military. On behalf of Chairman George P. Bush and the Texas Veterans Land Board, my name is Dan Hamilton. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Follow us on Instagram at Voices of Vets, on Twitter at Voice of Veterans, and on Facebook at facebook.com/Voices of Veterans. To hear more, please visit voicesofveterans.org. Join us in sharing the success stories of Texas veterans. Thank you for joining us for the Next Gen Warrior podcast.